So I've had a lot on my mind recently, and in particular, I've been thinking about the concept of reincarnation. This is the familiar idea that when your physical body, quote unquote, dies, your soul, spirit, energy, whatever you want to call it, enters a different dimension or a different plane of existence where your essence, your awareness experiences reality in a way that is completely different from its experience of reality within this body and its limited perception of the visible spectrum around it. And the conventional understanding of reincarnation, your awareness or energy is met by an intelligence that most would refer to in this situation as the creator or God. And this intelligence allows you to reincarnate onto the planet into a different being in a different situation based on a certain set of karmic guidelines that determine whether or not you will incarnate in a better place or a worse place than the last life that you lived. This is the conventional understanding that forms the basis and indeed underpins a lot of the Eastern religions. But I've been thinking more along the lines of reincarnation as it's referred to in some circumstances as a soul farm or a louche farm. And in this context, reincarnation is viewed as an actual trap for our awareness that has been set up by an intelligence in order to sustain itself and feed off of our energy consistently over time by continuously looping our collective energy over and over and over again in and out of the physical experience. If you view it as an etheric intelligence, you could view it as, say, a giant energetic leech that is encasing the planet, and this leeches our energy, and as a way to leech our energy, it continuously recycles it over and over and over again. And in that way, it can sustain itself indefinitely. In the same way that if a leech was on your body sucking your blood, if you didn't remove the leech, it would just continue doing so ad infinitum, into infinity. The problem, of course, is that, well, at least personally for me, given my current level of awareness and my current ability to perceive, I am not currently capable of perceiving that level of control in its true form directly. So I can only go by loose intuition and consideration of the information that has been put out by other people in this realm. And one of the main sources of this information are those who have had what are referred to as near-death experiences. There is an entire subculture of people out there that have discussed their near-death experiences, and there are authors who have collated this data and they have compared it and looked at similarities and differences, and then they've attempted to come at certain correlations and use those correlations to develop certain hypotheses about what might be going on when the energy leaves the body. But when you look at near-death experience accounts, you have to keep your guard up as far as what you allow to permeate your awareness. Why am I saying it like that? Well, what I mean is, for example, I'm 35 years old. And so I've been dreaming for 35 years. And over time, after you experience a lot of dreams, you can begin to draw conclusions about what type of dream it was, what type of influence was in those dreams. For example, some dreams are clearly the result of your subconscious mind influencing your dreaming state. You know, you suddenly that night are dreaming of something that you experienced that day. And so that's obviously something that your subconscious mind was putting into your dream state. But then there's other times where you experience dreams that are potentially being influenced by an intelligence that's trying to manipulate you. And this can be both positive and negative, or however you want to perceive the impact of those dreams. In other words, what I'm saying is, even with all of that experience, looking at and contemplating my own dreams, it's still possible for me to be manipulated within my dream. And if the entire thesis of the reincarnation soul trap is that there is an intelligence so advanced on an energetic level that it was able to set up a system of control like that, well, surely that intelligence is also able to read your mind in real time, and it's also able to influence your dreams, and so it would also be able to influence your near-death experience. So you have to take some of these near-death experiences with a grain of salt, especially the near-death experiences that all seem to line up together and say the same thing, such as, well, don't go into the light. In other words, if you are putting that thesis out there and allowing for that possibility, you also have to allow for the possibility that this intelligence would know that a certain subset of the population would eventually become aware of the situation, and they would know what sort of information they would be looking at, and so they would have the ability to actually go in and manipulate the minds of certain people with near-death experiences, knowing that they would eventually report them and speak out about them, and then many people would then hear about them, you see. That's all I'm trying to say, is you really have to consume all of that information with your guard up, okay? Because if you're like me, you've never had a near-death experience, so you have no context for what these people are talking about. And each and every one of us, for the most part, only die once, right? So we only have that experience one time. And so you can't practice examining that experience like you can practice examining your dreams. And so, like I was saying, even if you're studying your dreams and really contemplating them and being mindful of them, you can still be manipulated in them. I mean, I've had dreams even recently where I know I was being manipulated. And it's very clever the way it does it. So what I'm saying is, given my current level of awareness, if I had a death experience right now, I would have no context for the experience, and it would be very easy to manipulate me, even if I had read all of the near-death experience literature and I had considered it in the context of a potential soul harvesting system. I could still be manipulated based on that information when I entered the actual experience itself. You just have to be careful what thought forms you let crystallize in your awareness. Because if you're not careful, those crystallizations form into a hardened belief system that can be very detrimental to you. And in hindsight is the only time when you actually realize how detrimental a belief system actually was. And again, this is the problem with a death experience that you don't have before. Even if you go with this theory of reincarnation, and in that theory, many people on this planet have had many death experiences before, but the memory is wiped each time as a part of the system. So you're not going to, well, I assume you would not remember that when you die the next time, because the whole process was wiped when you reincarnated as a different being. But this philosophy of a soul farm is very closely related to the Gnostic teachings, where Sophia was actually trapped in what we refer to as the solar system by the demiurge, and this sort of artificial intelligence that isn't connected in the same way to nature that we are, trapped this creator being in this system, and as a result, it also trapped all of its creations here as well. And some of the Gnostic traditions even go as far as to say that your physical body itself is a trap for your spirit. And so they refer to this as a prison planet. And I personally do not resonate with that interpretation. It feels like disinformation to me. Now, I'm open enough to the concept to say, well, it could very well be the truth. However, in my own interactions with the natural world and with creation itself, I've never received a vibe that the experience I was having was artificial. Even though I'm open to the possibility that I could be manipulated in any of those moments, it's just one of those things where I trust my intuition of what transpired in those moments enough to say that they were natural experiences. And so the logical deduction from that is that this realm, this planet, this creation is entirely natural, and so is everything around it and extended from it, which would include the solar system and everything up from there and everything down from there in both directions. To me, it's more of the situation that I mentioned of some sort of energetic leech or some sort of energetic intelligence, a consciousness that was able to infect the minds of the creations here in the form of human beings. And through that infection, it was able to create a system on the planet that disconnected us from our natural environment and at the same time sustained their development and evolution. But anyway, the Gnostic philosophy is a very disempowering narrative. And it's easy to see why that narrative would be appealing when you look at the state of our existence on this planet. It's very easy for something like that to be very appealing as an explanatory tool for why we're in the situation that we're in. Now, as far as the integrity of the actual potential reincarnation system itself goes, you can see why all of the religions exist in the form that they do. In other words, when your spirit leaves your body and you enter this realm and this intelligence comes to you, it has to be able to convince you to willingly reincarnate back into the system. And it would be very easy to do that if you have certain crystallized belief systems within your awareness that you take with you into this realm that are easily used by this intelligence to make you feel guilty somehow for what you did when you were interacting with the very system that they constructed, which is designed to make you deviate in the first place. But that's a whole nother issue, right? They set it up for you to fail, and then when you fail, they come to you and convince you that you did something wrong and that you have to go back and remedy the situation, or at least attempt to live a better life, as it were. But of course, you're coming back into the very same civilization that's set up for you to fail. So more likely than not, you're going to fail again, So, but you can see how, for example, they would put the character Jesus Christ out there, where they would plaster this image of this man all over the place. And they would associate a lot of truth with that character they created, which was based on what a real person would say when they came into this realm and looked around at everything and said, hey man, you guys have a serious problem, So they create a character out of that and they call it Jesus Christ. Now, of course, my goal here is not to offend Christians in any way. It's just to say simple things like, well, the letter J didn't exist 400 years ago. And this character existed supposedly 2,000 years ago, so the name you're calling the character could not have existed because the English language itself didn't even exist back then. So who and what are you giving your energy to when you pray to the name Jesus Christ? Who or what are you giving your energy to when you adopt this image as your savior? You see, so when you enter this realm after your energy leaves your body, they could even come to you as that image. If you were a diehard Christian and you fully believed in that entire narrative as they present it to you, they could easily convince you to come back and learn your lesson, as it were. They could do the same thing if you were an atheist. They They come to you as a family member or whatever. They could come to you in any way that it's like in the movie Contact, right? Where she goes through the wormhole, and when she arrives at one of the node points, the intelligence that's waiting for her had already, saw her mind, downloaded all her memories, and then they created a construct based on that, which was Pensacola, Florida, the beach, and they came to her as her father because it would make it easier for her to not freak out and at least understand what they were telling her in that moment, right? But you can imagine that scene playing out in the realms that exist outside of the physical reality when you die and your energy leaves your body and enters this realm. They could come to you in that way and trick you into reincarnating. So the theory itself is sound as far as a potential explanation for the situation that we're in. Is it the reality of the situation? How should I know? Okay, I don't know. And if you're a Christian and you've been praying to Jesus Christ, I wouldn't even worry too much about it because that which created you knows your intent. So even if your energy is being siphoned by this intelligence because you are worshiping and praying to an entity that they created, the Creator still knows your intent, and it's not going to punish you for that. If your heart is in the right place, there's nothing to worry about, other than maybe considering the idea that it might be beneficial to the whole if you did not give your energy away and sustain an intelligence that is enslaving every being on this planet, right? I'm an American and I grew up in a Christian country and I grew up with that religion, so I understand it the best. And I have direct experience with it. So it's not that I want to pick on that religion, it's just that's what I'm familiar with. You could say the same thing about every other religion on the planet. You could say the same thing about the atheist philosophy as well. They could manipulate any of those ideas in the exact same way. All that matters is that this intelligence is advanced enough to read your mind and know what you feel guilty about through the experiences that you had here, that it set up for you in the first place again, and it's able to manipulate you in that way. But keeping an open mind about the whole thing, you have to consider the possibility that maybe the control system on this planet is entirely of human origin, or at least of humans that have somehow enabled themselves to maintain a higher level of awareness than the rest of the human beings around them. And because of this awareness, they're able to manipulate the general population through their various magical techniques, which magic is just putting beliefs into the mind of another person and getting them to believe that they created that belief themselves. In other words, it's entirely possible that if we were functioning correctly and we had a full understanding of our abilities, we might acquire a full understanding of the realm that exists outside of our physical experience while we're here in the physical experience over, let's say, 150, 200-year lifespan, or perhaps even longer, if we were not subjected to all of these poisons and toxins and belief systems, to the point where you could create willingly any reality for yourself that you wished when you left your physical body. And part of the disinformation is putting ideas about soul harvesting systems and reincarnation traps into the collective awareness so that you go into that experience, like I was saying before, and create it for yourself. You create that soul harvesting experience for yourself when you leave your body, right? You got to be open to that possibility as well. You should know enough by now to know that the intelligence that's orchestrating all this is always 5 steps ahead of you. So you got to consider every possibility. And I think that's an important one to consider. But anyway, it's fascinating to me the role that the Matrix has played in all this. And what I mean by that can only really be seen through a thought experiment. And it's a thought experiment that really tries to get at the nature of the experience that we're all having. So it's going to be very difficult for me to convey this in words, but hopefully the words will put the images in your mind so you can understand what I mean. So for this thought experiment, Let's take the liver, for example. Now imagine that every cell that makes up your liver is having an experience, a dream of its own, a life of its own, that is identical to the life that you are living on this planet right now. I know that's kind of hard to envision, but imagine the liver cells have co-created their own reality, and they're all dreaming their own reality together that is planet liver. Okay? It's in the same shape as the Earth, but it's planet liver. And it has oceans and land, and they're all experiencing their own lives. But let's imagine for the thought experiment that this liver is encased in a body that is 100% healthy. It's the healthiest body on the entire planet. And so the cells on planet liver are living lives that are in complete harmony with their surrounding environment. Because you see, the larger energy that it is a part of and supporting at the same time is also resonating at that frequency. And so holistically, the dream reality that's being produced on planet liver that they are all co-creating is one that would be referred to as heaven. Now, of course, the liver cells don't know that they're actually not experiencing reality as they think they're experiencing reality. They don't know that they're actually just a cell in your liver that is supporting a larger organism, right? It would have no concept of that other than what makes it up is the same thing that makes your body up and your larger awareness. So it would understand in a purely healthy environment that it was a part of something larger. And that energy, that intuition would drive the experience and the subjective co-creation of every one of the cells. But now imagine the flip side of that. Imagine that the body that planet liver is encased in is completely diseased. It's been exposed to toxins, mind control, parasites, all sorts of unnatural creations that were created by an intelligence that had a higher understanding of these things and so could introduce these sorts of things into an environment. Well, yes, of course, in many ways that would be like a disease infecting planet liver in that case, right? Because if the larger body is in a state of dis-ease and the cells are not creating together in a harmonious way because they're dealing with all of these foreign energies and substances that are not designed to be within that ecosystem, well, all of a sudden the cells are in a state of stress. And they might start arguing with each other. They might they might create their own communities within the planet that hate the other communities, and they wall themselves off. And the larger body sees this happening, and then they start walling. It starts using its own energy to wall stuff off, and then the larger scale refers to that as a cancer tumor. You see? Now, to the perspective and the scale that the cells in your liver are operating under, that because they are so much smaller than you and their awareness is on such a different time scale, they would view that as some sort of warlike conditions that might have gone on for thousands of years in your time to your awareness. They might be experiencing severe war and death and just horrific conditions. Maybe the grown liver cells are eating baby liver cells, doing all sorts of terrible things within their created reality that is used to give the cells an experience that they can have some sort of free will in, or at least the ability to co-create in a way that they're still extended some form of expression, the same expression that created everything. According to official statistics, I actually wrote them down here, there are 360,000 births a day on planet Earth, and there are 151,000 deaths per day on planet Earth. It's a little more than a 2-to-1 ratio of births to deaths. And you know what's so fascinating is that when you compare that to the cells in your body, there are 50 to 70 billion cell deaths every day. 50 to 70 billion. And because your body does not spontaneously combust, you know that it is likewise producing around 50 to 70, probably 80 to 90 billion cells every day to replenish the ones that die, that are recycled. If you look at the human beings that are birthed and die every day, it's very similar on a higher scale to the birth and death of all the cells in your body. So I don't think it's too much of a stretch to view the experience that your cells are having as very similar to the experience that we are having, even though we perceive what is going on as so much bigger than what is going on in our body. And this has really mind-blowing implications, right? Because if every cell in your liver is doing that, that means that every cell in every liver is a planet liver on our planet. So you can see the potential mind-blowing scale of creation in this thought experiment. And again, it's just a thought experiment, but I think it's a very interesting way to view what's going on in our reality. And the reason I was bringing up The Matrix and how damaging that movie was is because look at what The Matrix portrays. It showed human beings trapped by an artificial machine intelligence, turned into batteries, existing in little pods where the machine intelligence not only uses the human being for its own energy to support itself, like the Loosh farm concept, but it also injects a dream reality, a dream construct that is shared by all the human beings in the human soul farms, as it were, where all the human beings are dreaming some fake reality for themselves. But you see, it put it in such a negative, disempowering context, where the human beings don't know that they're jacked into this larger system where they're dreaming their reality when the actual situation that they're in is that they're just laying in some pod being food for a larger system and supporting a larger machine intelligence system. But you see, that could be the exact thing that is really going on in your body and in your mind itself. We could all be sitting inside of a liver right now. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? You know, we would have no concept of that other than knowing that we're connected to something larger. But the whole point of this civilization that we exist in is to disconnect us from that experience and that feeling. That's why nature is so de-emphasized and destroyed. It all makes sense in my head like that. But again, that's just a thought experiment. That might not be it. But you could see why they would put out The Matrix and put that spin on it. Because they could literally take the truth and pervert it in your mind so that, I mean, look at how many of these YouTube truth channels that pretend to be truth channels, I should say, use The Matrix to convey their message about what's happening. Everyone that talks about, well, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people that talk about near-death experiences and the soul farm and Loosh and this whole system of reincarnation, they call it a matrix, you know? It's incredible, really, when you step back and look at it. But not only does The Matrix twist and pervert this possible truth in that way, then on top of that, it contextualizes it in this artificial intelligence context so that now they have their scientists and their physicists and the tech moguls come out with this simulation theory, right? Where they say that your entire reality is just a simulation of some computer system. Because now you have the context for computers. And so that makes sense to the mind. But when you look at it in this way, that's just more of the same disinformation, getting you to view what objectively might be a holographic dreamlike experience fundamentally, right? The interference patterns of the projectors that produce a 3D hologram, that sort of a light projection system on a scale that you can't possibly imagine through your, limited perception of the visible spectrum. You can't even perceive what that projection system would be like, but it's projected from a higher, different, lower, whatever way you want to describe it, dimension, and that produces the interference pattern that creates your holographic perception of reality, of this dreamlike experience where you might be like the pod in the Matrix, just sitting there supporting something larger than yourself, giving your energy to something else. But in the natural design, it's a completely harmonious thing that is in no way evil in origins. It's only when a foreign intelligence, an artificial intelligence, hijacks your own perception and disconnects you from that natural design that you feel that way. And so then on top of that, now they have this whole philosophy where they're trying to tell you that holographic perception is a simulation that's not even real, right? Do you see how the Matrix is doing this on two levels there as it relates to the simulation hypothesis that is now being put out there? They take what is possibly just a natural situation and is really beautiful when you stand back and look at the whole thing, just an endless stream of scalar creation that gives each and every part of it an ability to create something for itself. It's just that wherever we are right now, it's sick. There's a disease in the minds of everything. And it's created this sick food chain and this sick perception of other human beings and animals and our relation to everything. And it's created this blockage, right? It's just this it's a blockage in the liver, in planet liver, it's not flowing like it should. It's not functioning like it should. And then as awareness continues to expand, they have all of these ideas out there waiting to sort of hijack that, And so the whole Gnostic philosophy about this being a prison planet and then your body being a meat suit prison for your spirit, and then simulation hypothesis and artificial intelligence, it's this artificial intelligence that created this computer system and then you're stuck in it. And all of that is working together to further disconnect people from what the truth might actually be. And so going back to the character of Jesus, it's obvious why they created that character. They had to, because anyone that understood what was really happening when they incarnated here and they told other people about it, well, that's exactly what they would tell them. They would say, hey, look, you have a serious problem here. Look at everything you're doing. It's not how you were designed. You're under mind control. That's what this person would tell you, And and on top of that, they would try to give you instructions on how to become what you were designed to be. And that, of course, would result in the destruction of the control system on the planet. And if the control system on the planet is destroyed, then the theoretical larger control system in the etheric realms when your spirit leaves your body would also be destroyed. Because if people were recycling back here into a healthy system, they would never be deceived when they got to that point to be recycled and fail all over again. You see, it would break the cycle. So obviously, that's a very powerful thing to be relaying to other people. So the intelligence behind all of this saw the genius in, okay, well, we have to take a lot of what anyone like that would say, and we have to create a character out of it, and then we have to get these people to worship this character, and they most likely will, because a lot of what this character will say will be legitimate. And then on top of all of that, we'll create these images of the character. We'll say that he was crucified on a cross and that he died for all of their sins, so then they'll definitely worship him. They'll worship this character, and they'll ignore a lot of what the character said because they think this character's name will save them if they pray to it. Do you see the insanity of the whole thing? And it's no different in the Eastern religions or any other religion. They have the ascended master, the teacher, who is created to subsume and siphon all of the collective energy into it and perpetuate the cycle.